The National Committee on U.S.-China Relations hosted an in-depth discussion with former Utah Governor and U.S. Ambassador to China Jon Huntsman on May 23rd in New York City. Stephen Orlins, president of the National Committee, moderated the discussion and brought his insight from having worked extensively throughout Asia and particularly in China in law, finance, and international diplomacy. Huntsman, who until recently was a candidate for the 2012 Republican presidential nomination, served as Washington's envoy to China from 2009 until 2011. U.S.-China relations have evolved rapidly and had a profound effect on how Huntsman understands the trajectory of diplomacy.
Flying into China, February 1972, and the President of the United States shakes the hand of Zhou and that transforms the world. My friends in China would refer to that period as 中国准备进入世界上, China preparing to enter the world.
Although the bilateral relationship is fraught with tension and disagreement, Huntsman takes a pragmatic stand in the interest of progress beneficial to both China and the U.S.
The hard part I found as U.S. ambassador was how do you strip the noise away from the relationship and put on the table the priorities that really do matter to people on both sides. The complexity involved in a dialogue that isn't just trade and investment or human rights or regional security. How do you develop stronger economies? How do you develop policies geared toward greater peace and stability in the region? How do you lift the prospects of people on both sides of the Pacific in ways that allow for the U.S.-China relationship to come out with a win-win outcome? How do you package all of this in a way that allows one to come up with a hierarchy of priorities that ring through loud and clear, such that you can actually get things done?
During his tenure as Utah governor, Huntsman introduced Mandarin study into the state's public schools and urged all Americans to invest in the U.S.-China relationship.
We had more Mandarin-speaking students than any state in America at one point in time. Why? Because young kids, when they're introduced to a language, their minds are going to be open not only to the language but to the culture as well. It'll be the prism through which they better understand someone on the other side of the world.
Huntsman saw firsthand the interest parents showed in their children's study of Mandarin, and he argued that economics was the catalyst for American students learning Chinese and gaining a foothold in the global economy.
The parents of these kids lining up outside the classroom to get their kids in Chinese language class. Why? Because they knew that their kids were stepping onto a much different world stage than they understood during their lifetimes.
As America has gradually deindustrialized since the 1970s, much of its manufacturing jobs have moved across the Pacific and inevitably to China, where the cost of production is much lower. While outsourcing has become a thorny issue in U.S. politics as well as an integral part of the business model of many multinational corporations, Huntsman believes a rapidly industrializing China will continue to invest in the U.S., potentially creating jobs.
A big chunk of money has been allocated for the U.S. market. They want to park it here because, after all, we're 25% of the world's GDP. We're still the best market in the world to be investing in. My sense is that China will want to move in more at the local level for investments, taking stakes of companies, small stakes to begin with, but working with the mayor, the governor, the member of Congress in making it an economic development and a jobs creation argument, as in we're saving jobs that otherwise might have been lost. And I think increasingly investment from China will play a role in our economic growth and our overall development. You're going to see states and the federal government, I think, step up because there will be a need, number one, on our part to get it, and two, a desire on the part of China to make the investment.
While Huntsman sees the trend of Chinese investment in the U.S. getting stronger, there is a related propensity for American politicians to blame China for various domestic problems.
Well, let's just say that when you're hard-pressed to identify leaders within Congress, in both bodies, who understand the relationship, who have invested some of their time in the relationship, and who are willing to kind of keep it going, keep the machinery running, as opposed to using it as a political piñata, which is a very easy thing to do, particularly during an election cycle like we're seeing now. A lot of folks in America don't see the value in promoting a strong U.S.-China relationship. So politicians get away with bashing and using the stereotypes in their town hall meetings and speeches. I've seen it time after time because they can get away with it.
In short, Huntsman stressed that the only way to move forward is by fostering a relationship at all levels of society.
We have to humanize the relationship. We have to make the relationship relevant in the lives of people at all levels of society. It cannot simply be a relationship where, people talk about the issues in large and intimidating lecture halls, but rather we see it as a relationship that impacts people at all levels of society because of trade, because of opportunity, because of educational prospects. And once you humanize a relationship, then the politicians get involved because they're going to follow the people, because that's the only way you're going to get the attention of Congress longer term, where they begin to say, my constituents now care about this relationship. Of course we have problems in the relationship. I've seen them firsthand for years and years and years. But we also have a relationship that we must make work. We have no choice. It's important for people in both countries, it's important for the region, and increasingly it's important for the world that the United States and China are able to get their act together on economic policy and on security policy. We cannot let it fail, because the U.S.-China relationship, for as far as the eye can see into the 21st century, will be the only relationship in the world that matters.
Derek Bosko reporting from New York.